Have you ever felt like you've been on an emotional roller coaster with someone who always seemed to put themselves first? Chances are, you might have crossed paths with a narcissist. In this video, we're diving into the often unseen effects of narcissistic abuse. We'll uncover the 10 uncommon traits that tend to surface in those who've experienced this challenging dynamic. Trait number 1. Narcissistic abuse victims are emotionally detached or overly attached. People abused by narcissists might react in different ways when it comes to emotions. Some might go into this emotional lockdown. They may keep their feelings silent as a shield from getting hurt again. They put up this invisible wall to safeguard themselves from any emotional smackdown. On the other side, other narcissistic abuse victims end up clingy or overly attached in relationships. They've been through emotional neglect before. So, they're on this mission for constant validation and reassurance. They're always seeking that extra bit of love and support. They seem to be making up for what they didn't get in the past. Trait number 2. Narcissistic abuse victims are too self-reliant. Narcissistic abuse victims might end up super self-reliant. They are used to handling things solo because they didn't get much support from the narcissist. As a result, they felt like they had to rely only on themselves. Suppose you have a friend who used to be in a relationship with someone who never supported them. This friend won't ask for help or lean on others, even when things get tough. Psychologists say it's because of that experience where they didn't get the support they needed. So now, they become overly self-reliant because they think no one can help them but themselves. They don't have a support system to turn to when problems arise. Trait number 3. Narcissistic abuse victims have an aversion to vulnerability. Survivors of narcissistic abuse can develop an immense dislike for showing vulnerability. Imagine someone who's been hurt before by trusting too much. Suppose they entrusted a friend with a secret and that friend blabbed it on everyone. Psychologists say narcissists tend to prey on vulnerabilities and use them against their victims. So, survivors learn to keep their guard up to prevent themselves from getting hurt again. They put up these emotional walls as boundaries that people shouldn't cross. They might even avoid relationships or situations where they must be open or vulnerable. It's their way of protecting their feelings from getting trampled again. Trait number 4. Narcissistic abuse victims have an inhibited creativity. The constant criticism and devaluation by the narcissist might stifle creative expression. Victims may feel a constant fear of judgment when attempting to express themselves artistically. Imagine you're trying to paint something or write a song. However, a voice in your head keeps saying, "That's rubbish, you can't do it." That's what it's like for people who've been through narcissistic abuse. All the put-downs and negativity can make it challenging for these people to let their creative juices flow. Your creativity goes into the back seat when you're in an environment where nothing you do seems right. It's like having this mental block that stops you from exploring new ideas or expressing yourself freely. Trait number 5. Narcissistic abuse victims are hyper-responsible. Victims might develop an exaggerated responsibility for others' emotions or situations. They feel overly accountable, even for things beyond their control. It stems from the constant need to please or accommodate the narcissist. Suppose you grew up with a parent who was a total narcissist. Your mom always made you feel like you had to fix things, even when they weren't your fault. Now, as an adult, you ensure everyone's happy, even if it means sacrificing your needs. This hyper-responsibility often stems from situations where you constantly tiptoe around someone's feelings. Therapy and self-awareness can help people realize it's okay not to carry the world's weight on their shoulders. Trait number 6. Narcissistic abuse victims have a high tolerance for discomfort. Imagine someone who's been in a toxic relationship with a narcissist for a while. They might have gotten used to feeling unhappy or stressed out constantly. Psychologists say this kind of constant discomfort can become a routine for them. They've been through so much psychological abuse that their brain gets trained to handle it without even realizing how bad it is. They could end up ignoring their needs or not realizing they deserve better. Narcissistic abuse victims built up this super high tolerance for feeling crummy because of what they've been through. It becomes challenging for them to recognize that they should feel better. Psychologists talk about how it's a learned thing, like a survival skill. However, it can make it hard for them to break free from that cycle of discomfort. Trait number 7. Narcissistic abuse victims go through somatization. When someone goes through a lot of emotional distress due to narcissistic abuse, it can show up in their body. It can include feelings of constant pain or getting sick without any apparent reason. Your emotions get tangled up and they spill over into your body. Psychologists talk about this thing called somatization. It's when your mind and feelings are so overwhelmed that they start showing up as physical symptoms. Imagine constantly feeling anxious because of someone making you doubt yourself always. That anxiety could turn into headaches or stomach issues, even if there's no actual physical problem there. It's how our body tries to cope with all the emotional turmoil. It turns feelings into physical sensations. Trait number 8. Narcissistic abuse victims have a heightened empathy and sensitivity. Narcissistic abuse victims might end up having this superpower of empathy. Imagine someone who's been through emotional manipulation with a narcissistic partner or a boss. They can get in tune with other people's feelings because they've been through an emotional roller coaster. They have this radar for emotions because they need to be alert to the subtle changes in the narcissist's moods. Suppose someone who's been in a relationship with a narcissist has always tried to read between the lines to avoid a blow-up. They might have also tried to comfort their partner even when they have much in their emotional bucket. Psychologists explain it's like a survival mechanism. Dealing with someone who's all about themselves can make you hyper-aware of others' emotions to navigate tricky situations. Trait number 9. Narcissistic abuse victims lean toward people-pleasing or avoidance. Some narcissistic abuse victims might adopt a people-pleasing behavior. They may become the ultimate yes person. They always aim to keep the peace by doing whatever it takes to get that approval. They may neglect their needs because they focus on prioritizing others. Conversely, other narcissistic abuse victims might lean towards avoidance. They distance themselves from any situation that might resemble past abusive experiences. The painful flashbacks of the abuse are just too much to handle. Trait number 10. Narcissistic abuse victims have a hypercritical self-evaluation. Imagine constantly feeling like someone is looking over your shoulder, pointing out every tiny mistake you make. It's how it feels like for people abused by narcissists. They become super hard on themselves as if they have an internal critic who won't quit. They've absorbed all those negative comments from the narcissist. And now, they can't stop judging themselves. Suppose you spill a cup of coffee by accident. Instead of thinking, "Oops, it happens to everyone," narcissistic abuse victims might say, "I'm so clumsy, I can't do anything right." It's tough because that self-criticism can affect how they see themselves in every situation. Understanding the uncommon traits of narcissistic abuse victims sheds light on the complex aftermath of such relationships. Recognizing these traits can aid in healing, fostering self-compassion, and seeking support. It's crucial to acknowledge that while these characteristics may linger, they don't define a person's value. Healing involves self-awareness, self-care, and gradually reclaiming self-worth. Don't be afraid to ask for help if the emotional weight you're carrying is already too much to handle. Hello, viewers! Surprisingly, 80% of you haven't subscribed. If you are learning from this informative video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Your support means